We have the benefit of having a great CTE programs in our district. So we
those are lacking in some places.
Yeah, we have an auto shop, and it's a great auto shop.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've always had a big passion for that.
That's so cool. It's, in Sacramento, we often talk about the sort of the demise of the middle class jobs.
Right.
They're still out there.
Yeah,
We're just not preparing people for that.
Right.
One conversation at a time, brick by brick.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Brick by Brick podcast. I am your host, Brad Critchfield, and you are watching the podcast that builds community one conversation at a time, brick by brick. Today, I have a very special guest, Anthony Rendon, former Speaker of the State Assembly and now candidate for the California Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Yep, absolutely. You nailed it.
Dude, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Must be a busy time of year.
Busy time of year. I have a 6-year-old who started kindergarten 2 months ago. So it's the holidays sort of like through the eyes of a 6-year-old, which is awesome. It's great. It's really cool.
And you usually bring her with you at all the events. I love that because I feel like it gives me permission to do that with my kids.
Yeah. I bring her to a lot of events. She's kind of grown up around it. She's probably my biggest critic in terms of my speech. She tells me when I'm not
Keeps
very
on
good.
your toes.
Yeah, exactly. She does. Yeah, exactly.
She's always so well behaved too. That's awesome.
That's what you see.
Well, you know what? I say that. I get it.
Yeah.
Because people say that about my kids. I'm like, well, thank you.
Yeah,
But
thank you. There's a bigger picture, fuller picture. Yeah, exactly.
So, running for a statewide seat.
Yeah.
How is that different than what you've done before?
Totally different. When you run for state assembly, they divide the state into 80 districts. So everybody gets about 500,000 people. That's walkable. Obviously, you can walk precincts, do all that kind of stuff. Statewide, it's all media. It's all, whether it's social media, whether it's radio, we're going to do a little bit of TV. It's all media. It's really abstract. Makes it kind of, it's not as personal. Like I was coming over here to the studio and remember these streets, right? I remember knocking on people's doors. I know somebody who lives there. I know somebody who lives there. This is a lot more abstract. It's really different, less, more impersonal. And then just the size of the state. I was reading a story, I think yesterday, about the new president of Ireland. And I was thinking, she's got 5 million people in her country. We've got 40 million in our state, right? So we're, 8 times larger than the country of Ireland, and a huge state, right? Lucky to live near the Long Beach airport. I get to, my whole thing is I need to be home every night to put my daughter to sleep. But it's a lot.
This episode of Brick by Brick is brought to you by Healthy Foods, single ingredient supplements like protein, collagen, and creatine, and hands down, the most affordable on Amazon. Before starting a podcast, I owned a gym, I owned a supplement shop, and I know how much garbage is out there, but not Healthy Foods. You buy protein, guess what? That's what you're getting. It's just protein. Click the link in the description, and we'll get back to the show. That's got to be, that's a hard decision, right?
Yeah.
So I know in the assembly, like the whole 4 nights away and then 3 nights for everybody serving, like that's really difficult. How did you handle that?
It was hard. I was lucky that we bought a house the housing market has changed quite a bit in Sacramento. Yeah. So we were able to buy a house in 2012. I got elected in 2012. We bought a house in 2013. And I'll be honest with you, that made it a lot better for me, sort of like psychologically. A lot of my friends, colleagues live in hotels, which can be kind of impersonal and all that. To be in a house every night was cool. But yeah, we flew every Sunday night out of Long Beach Airport, flew back every Thursday. You kind of learn to divide your life, kind of learn to divide your suits, kind of learn to figure out how to visit family and spend that kind of time together. It's hard, but doable. And honestly, I grew up in a family. My dad always worked 3 jobs. He'd leave the house before it was, it was still dark, and he'd get home when it was, when it was dark. So other people have tougher lives. I get that.
Different generation, right?
Very different generation.
I think about that all the time. I say that The burden of a good father is always feeling like you could be a better father.
Yeah.
Like, and I think back, like my dad, like he would come home super late. He had, he owns a barber shop here. Have a 6-pack of Coors Light, and
Yeah.
he just didn't bother. Like, I don't think he was burdened with the same. Like, I don't think he came home every night going like, "What can I do to be a better?"
Right,
It's just a different thing.
Totally agree. It was all part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. No, yeah, I have those same memories of my dad, and yeah, it's today's tough, but the past was tough too.
So, how does it work with like say the superintendent position? Is it do you have to live in Sacramento?
Not really. It's a little bit different because there are offices here in Southern California. Like even when I was speaker, there was a state office at the Reagan Building in downtown LA. The superintendent has offices in LA, so I can spend more time there. But there are meetings that take place in Sacramento, and I definitely have to go attend those.
So, what made you jump back in? Because you were the speaker of the state assembly,
Yeah,
but you've been out of office for what, 6 months? 9 months?
about a year, 13 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, what made you jump back in?
Yeah, I mean, I think my whole story is kind of a California public education story, right? I mean, I went to K through 12 in public schools here in California, not too far down the road in Montebello, and then in Whittier. Um, and then once I got out of high school, told this story a million times, lousy high school student, 0.83 grade point average at one point. But it was low cost, high quality public education, right? Our community college system, our Cal State system, our UC system that kind of allowed me to do everything that I've been able to accomplish in life. So then worked for a nonprofit organization, did early childhood education, again, state programs. So for me, I've been involved in education from, literally from early childhood education all through graduate school in the UC, Cal State, and early childhood education system. So for me, it was a really good fit. I think this is a tough time. Um, I went to community college and paid $5 a semester.
Right.
I went to Cal State Fullerton and paid like $300 a semester my first time out. Times are different. It's a lot more difficult for kids today, and I think sometimes it becomes just sort of a cost calculation. They just think like, am I going to get this back on the back end? So for me, kind of, I want to kind of restore that promise that was kind of given to me.
But while you were in the assembly, you still did a lot of work on education.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I was proud that what kind of inspired me to run for office was 2011. We had funding cuts in early childhood education, about $1.2 billion in early childhood education. My first budget as speaker, we restored $1.8 billion. So that made me really proud, right? We went, when I got sworn in 2012, we as a state were, I think, 47th in per pupil funding. By the time we left, I was in the we were in the top 10. Not taking credit for that. That's a team effort, right? Legislatures are team efforts.
You can take a little.
A little.
Sorry, yeah.
Legislatures are team efforts, and there was a Senate and a couple of governors that I served with. But I was proud of the work we did, and yeah, we definitely worked in education.
And your time in the nonprofit with early childhood education, that probably informs a lot of what you.
Yeah, big time. Good point. Yeah, big time. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the sort of story. It started with me graduating from college, and I was running gang programs, first time offender at risk youth programs, and my offices were on the second floor. And I would, uh, run in late as I usually am, like I was tonight. Apologies. I'd kind of run in
It's
late.
raining.
Yeah, it's raining. Yeah, exactly. And I just kind of like blow right past the childcare center on the first floor. I wouldn't pay attention to it, right? And I go up to my second floor and work with kids that had a lot of issues, gang problems, drug problems, alcohol problems, a lot of addiction, abuse. And I didn't think much about early childhood education. Then when I had been there a couple of years, I realized that a lot of the families a lot of the communities, a lot of the neighborhoods that had early childhood education programs didn't have kids upstairs.
Right.
You could solve a lot of those problems early on. So I just made a decision like this is what I'm going to do in my career. So yeah, absolutely informed everything I do.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense to me because in the assembly, budget wise, you're creating like a framework.
Yep.
But then stepping into superintendent, I mean, that's where like the accountability and the actual rolling things out. It's more getting into it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I loved the assembly. I thought it was great. But you don't really have an opportunity to develop like an expertise, right?
Right.
One moment and California is so diverse.
Right.
I mean, we got Hollywood, we got Silicon Valley, we got agriculture, we got everything, which is cool, but it's
Right.
hard to be a specialist on anything. I'm voting on water policy one minute, I'm voting on ranching and mining the next, trade, all that kind of stuff. There's so much to it. And I miss kind of getting my hands dirty, right? I miss kind of like becoming a specialist on something. And I did, like I said, early childhood education for a good 15, 20 years. I know that field. It's changed a little. And we have transitional kindergarten, which is
Right.
a big change. And I'm sure you've dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm excited to kind of focus on something. I think it's exciting from a policy perspective, and education I think is the most important thing we can focus on.
Well, I think you're primed, and I think you're the best person for that role. And I could answer this next question myself, but for you, what do you think sets you apart from the other candidates in this race?
Thanks for asking. It's interesting. You serve in elective office, you serve in the legislature, you end up running against your friends and great candidates. A lot of them. There's about 6 candidates. A lot of very talented folks. I'm the only one who sat across the table like this from 2 governors and negotiated 7 budgets. I'm the only one who sat across the table like this, negotiated 7 bill packages with the head of the Senate. To be able to negotiate at a very high level, and then to also extend that when you are the Speaker of California, you take on sort of a national role, right? During COVID, everybody thinks the rivalry in politics is between Democrats and Republicans. It's not. It's between legislatures and executives. Um, we
I
felt,
can see that.
yeah, we felt during COVID that we, being all the speakers, all 51 of us, including Puerto Rico, we felt like a lot of the governors were kind of overstepping. It didn't matter whether you were a Democrat or Republican or served with a Democrat or Republican on the other side. We felt like, hey, we're part of this equation too, right? We sort of organized all the speakers and sort of like, hey, we gotta, we are the closest to the people. We're the most democratic, branch. We need to be in this. So, for me, a lot of what being from California means is to be, it's the largest state, it's the biggest state, the most advanced state in a lot of ways. It's about, sort of striking a tone for the rest of the country. So not only did I think I, provided leadership at a state level, but I think I extended that to be outside of California as well.
Yeah, it's crazy to think the types of conversations that you would have to have in that role, especially as speaker. What do you think is the most memorable like exchange you had where you had to kind of sit down and really figure something out with somebody?
There's a lot of them. One of the, I always say the speakership is a great fraternity. There's, again, Democrats, Republicans, former Republican speakers call me and offer help as much as the Democrats do. Every time there's a crisis, we dealt with wildfires, we dealt with collapse of a dam, we dealt with everything you could think of. Every time that would happen, my phone would ring and some old speaker would say, hey, look, this is how I dealt with it. When COVID happened, my phone didn't ring.
Really? Yeah.
I called up everybody, every former speaker who's still alive. I'm like, hey,
They're like, we got nothing for you. You got to figure
that's
this one
exactly
out yourself.
what they all said. No clue. they all said like, "Oh, I don't know, we never had this before." So that was one of the more interesting decisions or interesting situations because I kind of had to uh, invent it. There was a huge the Spanish flu about 100 years before,
Right.
and I read a little bit on that about what had been done. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the hardest things is when there's no roadmap.
Right. Right. And what are you gonna do with so this campaign? Like, what are you kind of like? What's your mindset going into? Because you have the next uh elections in November, right? So
Yep.
you have about a year.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's a primary in March and then
oh, is
November.
there?
Yeah,
Is it?
primary
How
March
does
to
that work?
November. As primary in March, it's a nonpartisan office.
Right.
So the top two
Okay.
advance unless somebody gets 51%, then it's over. There's
Okay.
seven candidates. I don't think anybody's going to get 51%. I think it's unlikely. So it'll
Yeah.
be a two-part election.
Yeah. I was watching. You participated in a Zoom with
Yeah, not too long ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's quite a few
Yeah,
candidates.
there are.
One thing I always appreciate about you, because I'm a Lakewood guy, so I always saw you kind of going it. And when I first started with the Chamber of Commerce, and I was kind of like, putting my toe in the water, seeing how when you would come in, you would always you would come in and there was a vibe shift, like, oh, Anthony's here, and you were always super friendly to everybody. You worked the room, and then you had so many events going on that sometimes you would leave. And I remember, and I'm just going to be very honest. I remember the first time I was like, man, he just leaves in the, he doesn't stay for the entire, because some of these events are super long, right?
Super long.
And then I think at like after a couple of years of being into it, I was talking to David Ariano, city council member, and I was like, I totally get it now, because when you want to be super active and be everywhere, I mean, you're moving all the time, and you always did that.
Yeah.
You always showed up. You always came to everything, especially here in Lakewood. And I always really appreciated that.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. That means a lot. I think there's two keys to that. First of all, I also had great staff, so that when I wasn't here, when I was in Sacramento, I had somebody always covering for me and saying I wish he could be here, and then being my eyes and ears. We had these Friday morning meetings where they would tell me like, "Hey, I went to this event and they talked about this." So even when I wasn't there, I had reports back. And I think the other thing, and this is like, I think there's an analogy to parenting here too, is just about being present.
Right.
If you
Showing up to the baseball game.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. If you have 15 events, you should be thinking about the one you're at.
Right.
Not the other 14, not the one before. Sometimes you had a bad experience, or, somebody was rude to you, or sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to be late to the next event. You can't be thinking about that.
Right.
They got one shot to be there, and you may be late to the next event, but you're going to worry about that next.
Right.
It's not what you do now. And being a parent, I think, is the same way. My daughter doesn't care if I had a bad day.
Right.
When I
Right.
come home, it's like, you got to be with me now.
Right. That's always my mindset when I
Good.
get home to the girls.
That's
It's
cool.
all that stuff gets left at the
It
door.
has to be.
And I don't know how this is going to sound, but so I've never had a dog my entire life, but I got a puppy like 3 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And even more so now than with the kids, like the dogs are just excited to see me when I go in,
Yeah.
and I feel like I've missed out on that for a long time. I mean,
That's cool.
because sometimes when the kids get a little bit older, that whole daddy's home
Right.
kind of goes a
Yeah.
little bit.
That's what I hear. My
Yeah.
daughter's still 6, so I'm not excited about when that does go away, but it
Yeah.
does. Huh?
At 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
My youngest is 8, and
Okay.
I think that was
I got 2 more years.
yeah. But then you get a puppy, and then it comes back. That's what I'm trying to say.
Puppy's not.
I mean,
puppy's not 8.
What does the next year look like? How do you map that out?
Yeah, it's at the outset, because it's like a media campaign for the most part. It's a lot of fundraising, a lot of endorsements. That's kind of what you do at the outset. And then after that, it's all it's like sports, right? It's practice and then execution, right? So right now it's a lot of going out, talking to people, doing a lot of interviews, trying to raise some money. Um, I think listening is a really important part of it. I think I ran early childhood education. I was in Sacramento for 12 years, to be honest, right? I haven't run an early childhood education program for 12 years, and it's funny to consider myself an expert, but there's changes that have happened. We talked about transitional kindergarten. That's a big change as well in that space. So I think that sort of information gathering is a big part too. And honestly, having a daughter in kindergarten's cool. I get to see. I volunteered. I was looking at my hours today. I think I volunteered 17 hours so far this year. To see what the teachers go through, to see what the students encounter, things like today. It was rainy. I dropped my daughter off. I'm thinking, wow, that teacher's going to be in a classroom with 30 hyped
Right.
6 year olds all day, no recess, no running out and getting their energy out. Right?
I couldn't do it.
I know. God bless them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could not do it. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's a lot of it is about paying attention and kind of listening and seeing what people are going through.
So what do you hear when you talk to people?
I hear a lot of things. I hear frustration. I hear frustration with a lot of the speed of our schools, right? I hear, to try to get, in particular, in and around special education, right?
Right.
Getting referrals can be very difficult. I hear from the teacher side, I hear it's sort of a dual conversation. They say two different things at the same time. They say, we're being asked to do more and more, being
Right.
asked to be like social workers and do all these other things. We don't mind doing that. That's okay. We think that's part of the learning environment. That's part of uh, uh, what we signed up for.
Yeah.
But we need more time to figure it out. We need more training. We need all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that we have more social problems now than we did in the past. I think my sister and I were talking, my older sister and it was an interesting conversation. We were talking the other day. Was talking about my grandmothers, and she said, when they used to do this and they'd get real sad and this and that. I said, yeah. And I said, they probably suffered from depression. And I thought, wow, never thought about that, right? There's a lot of things
Right.
in the past that you didn't talk about
Right.
or you didn't realize or, what left undiagnosed. I don't know that we have more problems today than we did in the past, but we're more aware of them.
Right.
And I think that makes it incumbent upon us to deal with those
Right.
problems. And those are the kids spend as much time at school as they do at home, or maybe not, but they spend a lot of time at home at school. That's a place to deal with them, but we need to make sure that our teachers and professionals can have the ability and skills to deal with them.
Yeah. And I get it too, because I know, you mentioned a couple times, like maybe you're not an expert in the classroom, but that's kind of how I feel being on school board.
Yeah.
But all four of my colleagues are teachers.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
then I
Interesting.
come, I'm like, 2.0 maybe
Right.
in a good semester, like not the best student at all. But the willingness to have conversations
Yeah.
and advocate. I mean, that's if nobody expected, you don't expect people to be an expert. You expect people to fix problems.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
I want to help people and help address those issues. And I don't think in most cases you need to be an expert. You
Yeah.
just need to be able to ask the right questions, do
Yeah.
the work, and provide solutions. Right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that, any classroom is made up of a lot of 2.0 students.
Right.
They need a voice on the school board, right? You have, because of your specific educational journey, you have very specific, what it's like to be the kid in the back of the room
Right.
rather than the kid in the front of the room and say like, hey, they need this. This is how they get by. And also, it's cool that there's 4 teachers on your school board, but you need different voices, right?
Yeah.
You need different experiences. And the legislature was like that. Again, being in a state as diverse as California, I remember my freshman year, I'm from LA, right? Urban guy. And I look over and I see a dude, his name, Frank Bigelow, ended up becoming a really good friend of mine. See a guy wearing this cowboy hat and go over like, hey, what's your deal? He's like, oh, I'm a rancher. And he would fly from Sacramento, I think, an hour north, like northeast, and then jump in a pickup truck and drive another hour, right? And that was his district, right? And that's cool, right? It's a very
Yeah.
different perspective. If you're making decisions, in my case, for a state of 40 million people as diverse as Redding and Coachella and San Francisco and LA and Palm Springs and Santa Barbara, you need to have everybody at the table. And if you're making decisions for Bellflower Unified, very diverse district, lots of kids who are good in school, lots of kids who need a little encouragement, lots of
Right.
kids who are somewhere in between, they need to hear from everybody.
Right. And I have really good board members, and I always appreciate when they're able to bring that firsthand experience
Yeah.
to a lot of issues. And then when there's something that's like marketing or something, I'm like, all right, guys,
Yeah, this is me.
this
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is my time.
Yeah, the legislature's like that too. I get a bill on agriculture, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm looking around, like,
Gotta
all
look
right,
for Frank Bigelow.
yeah, exactly.
Where's that cowboy?
Yeah, I trust that dude. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. But yeah, in Bellflower Unified, we have probably a lot of the same issues that people have across the state.
Sure.
We a little bit unique, but we have one of the highest percentage of identified SPED.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so we have a very high, and then addressing that, but like to the point of a state superintendent, there's and I just so I went to Washington last year, and we were advocating for more SPED funding from the federal government,
Mhm.
right? But that's something that from a superintendent, like there's a lot of advocacy. There's handling our state's education, but then there's also a lot of advocacy that you have to really fight back and advocate for the entire state
Yeah.
at the federal level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's a big part of it, and that's kind of what I did as speaker too. Like as
Right.
speaker, we had a federal lobbyist, and I think it's important to make sure that, particularly with there's challenges to the U.S. Department of Education right now. It's
Right.
really important to have a very strong presence in D.C. Have good relationships with both of our U.S. senators. Served with Alex. I didn't serve with Adam. But good relationships, and I think that's an important part of it as well. And I think if you think about California, like I can give you a billion examples, but like let's take homeless veterans. I remember going to DC probably 6 or 7 years ago, and we were getting something like 18% of the vouchers for homeless veterans programs. And I was like, hey, we have something like 28% of the homeless veterans in the country are in California. We're getting 18%, right? And I think it's that kind of advocacy and awareness that that is important to bring to the job.
Yeah. And like I said, before getting on the school board, I've done a lot of learning in the past 3 years, specifically at school. And I got into it because my kids, were getting into school, and I was starting to show up. And I think there's kind of a trajectory there in that. And then having a daughter with special needs,
Yeah.
you end up, whether it's like being in IEPs, you have to learn a lot. And one thing I realized from a point of privilege is that I have an amazing wife she has a list for all the lists and a schedule for the schedules and a calendar that she is on top of
That's
everything.
cool.
And she advocates very well for our kid, but it's like a full-time job.
Mhm.
And
is.
but when I realized that not every kid has that,
Yeah.
and being able to get what your child needs to succeed is very difficult, and breaking down those barriers and really making a collaborative effort is something that we focused a lot on,
Good.
because it's very difficult for a lot of parents, especially in our area, which even having everything translated into Spanish, there were things that you would just think
Yes.
were already happening, and then you get in and you go,
Yeah.
what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
just trying to solve those problems.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, no, I had an older sister who kind of did everything before me, and I kind of leaned on her. And I think you see that in a lot of, particularly like immigrant families, where it's the
Mhm.
oldest that speaks the
Right,
language better
right.
than the parents, right? So yeah, no, navigating that. And for me, even like, as an older dad, it's interesting to have a daughter start kindergarten, you know, a long time after I left K through 12, because like the apps are incredible, right?
Hmm.
It's like it's constant communication, right?
Right.
Obviously there were no apps when I was in kindergarten, right? And there's like constant communication between the teacher and I and the parents and I. And everybody's talking about all these different things that are going on and they're raising money for different things. But I know there are a lot of people who aren't as plugged in as we are, or if they may be plugged in, but they're working the night shift or whatever,
Right.
right? And that's a special challenge. And so, yeah, no, I think the easier we can make it for people, particularly working families, even I one of the memories I always have of serving in the state legislature was as somebody who ran nonprofit organizations in urban areas. Um, Everything's fairly close to you.
Right.
Um, I would go to my colleagues' districts in, Coachella, Brawley. If you are in, you have a medical emergency and you live in Mecca, how long does it take you to get to La Quinta or Brawley, right? If you're in, Humboldt, where's the closest, crisis, right? I mean, there's some great people have to deal with vast distances, and you start to realize that in other parts of the state they have different challenges,
Right.
and that's part of it.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest? Well, I have to say biggest a challenge at the high school level.
High school level is a good question. I think what we saw, particularly in my last 4 or 5 years, there was a presence of social media and what that does. A lot of bullying, a lot
I don't
of
know how they do it.
I don't either.
I don't think
It's
I couldn't
mind-boggling.
imagine going through high school
Yeah.
with social media.
It's mind-boggling. The image issues, the bullying, the just the constant attention, and I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge for teachers, challenge for students, challenge for parents.
It's a challenge for me.
I bet it is.
I
Yeah,
mean, just
yeah,
as a human.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. It is. Yeah, yeah. Earlier we were talking about being present, right? I mean, that's a. I've noticed I'm okay at putting down my phone and doing whatever I need to do with my daughter or whatever. My problem is when I pick it up, like I'm just gonna look for, just see if I got any texts, and then it'll
Mhm.
take me 15 minutes to put it down again.
Right.
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 I'm not just looking at one text. I'm just gonna respond to this one and this one and this one. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a big issue, and I know we in the legislature we said that all school districts have to have a cell
Right.
phone use policy, and that's been kind of, as I've been traveling around the state, it's been all over the map. What are you guys doing? Are you happy with what you're doing from that?
So I know when Lowenthal, I think Lowenthal
I was
might have,
Lowenthal, yeah.
So the policy was that every district needs to create a policy.
Yeah.
So we did.
Yeah.
And I think we went softer on it.
Yeah.
LA went full ban.
They did.
I personally was favorable of a full ban.
Yeah.
But our district decided to, what we found, and I think this is probably very common, at least from what I've seen, is sometimes there is a policy that addresses a lot of it already on the books, but it's not enforced.
Yeah.
So where we came to, and I agree with it, we can't say this policy doesn't work and we have to do this measure if we've never really even enforced what we're supposed to. So we went back to that policy. We beefed it up a little bit, and we just made it very clear in all of our communications. This is our policy, and we have to do this. We have to, and then we'll reevaluate at the end of the year.
Oh, good.
So I mean, no phones in the classroom, but they can still use them at lunch and on break. When the conversation started about the possibility of a ban, there were a lot of parents.
Yeah.
Not like that.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to a deeper concern, right? Because most of that came from a place of, I want to know where my child is, and it's a safety thing.
Yeah.
And they saw it as a safety issue, even though My not my response, because I'm not trying to, you know, get slapped by a parent, but uh, in an emergency, your child messaging you is more about you feeling
It
comfortable
is.
rather than the kid's
That's
safety.
a good point.
But
Yeah,
uh,
that's a good point.
but if your kids felt safe at school, then that becomes less of a concern.
Yeah, it does.
So we really did a lot of work this year as a district to improve all of our safety measures too. Because if that's the concern with that, well, we have to address the underlying concern. So we're doing a lot of the foundational work, and then we're going to reevaluate that policy and see what we need to do, because it really is a big problem.
Yeah, that's good. What I like about what you said was the reevaluation part. I think that's the one thing government does poorly. And I think it's because of a few reasons. I think, first of all, I think people in Sacramento, they always say don't fall in love with your bills, but people do, right? You just become so fixated on an idea, and this is the idea, and this is going to fix the problem. And then reality sets in, the bill takes effect, and you're like, oh. And you have to have mid-course correction. You really do. You have to like, evaluate things. And things don't always, have the impact that you want them to have. So I think that's really important. Something that's been missing.
Yeah. I have a question for you, and I haven't heard a good reason why this is the case, but I've always felt that in high school, one thing that parents all generally agree on, they want their kid to have financial literacy, but it's pretty absent from curriculum. And at one point, I was watching a podcast, and they were like going down the conspiracy theory, and they were like they don't want I mean, because I know when I got out of high school, I went to Long Beach City College, and I remember they don't allow it anymore, but the tables,
of course,
and I got locked into this,
of course
and
you do.
And then I ended up having to default, and it ruined my credit score for 5 years. It totally sidetracked. When I met my wife, it's funny. When I met my wife, my wife's way out of my league. Like I married up. But I was really insecure about my credit score. And I remember,
was that part of the dating process?
It kind of was. I remember she came out, and I was like, we're starting to get serious. And I said, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And I was going to break the news that my credit score wasn't good. And my wife is really cool, but I was very serious about it. Like it was, and I told her, and she just laughed at me. And I was like so distraught that she thought it wasn't a big deal. Because your credit score, especially at that age, it stresses you out.
Oh, it does.
It's hard to be happy when you're stressed out. And it kind of becomes a part of your identity. It took me a long time to work out of that. And I think I kind of hold a grudge on the fact that I was kind of set up. Like I didn't know about interest rates and what paying the minimum payment was going to do. But looking back, I do kind of think why are we that is that's not even a full semester of just, mortgage rate, interest rate. Hey, things to watch out for. Why do you think that that's not done?
That's a good question. I don't know. There was a point, it's interesting in the nonprofit sector where I worked for 20 years. It's like anything else, things become kind of hip. And I remember a point probably about 20 years ago when financial literacy was really in. But it wasn't high school kids. It was for, for younger adult, I would say college age maybe. Which is great, but by that point, a lot of people have made a lot of mistakes. Why? I don't know. I think I really don't know. I mean, I think historically speaking, from the long scope of history, we haven't had credit cards for that long, right?
Right.
And I wonder if it's just kind of been something we never incorporated into our curriculum, but it's desperately needed.
Yeah,
desperately.
I think like that, and just mortgage rates, things because until you're thinking about it, you're really not. And especially buying a home today, it's not as simple as it was. So there was some study I was reading that most younger people under 30 that buy a home, they're not doing it alone. Even if you have a good job, you're still learning about what having a cosigner is, and what you have to figure all that out. I just, that's kind of my pie in the sky. I want to get to a point
That's
where
great.
real life skills. We have the benefit of having a great CTE programs in our
Oh, good.
district. So we
Those are
CalApps.
lacking in some places.
Yeah,
Good for
we
you.
have an auto shop,
Uh-huh.
and it's a great auto shop.
Cool.
Kids are just learning a lot of like real career skills, and
That's at Bellflower High School.
yeah, but the auto shop's at Bellflower.
Uh-huh.
But CalApps, I'm the president of that board. We service Bellflower Unified, Linwood, and Paramount, and now we just moved into ABC. But we do all their CTE programming.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've always had a big passion for that.
That's so cool. It's, in Sacramento, we often talk about the sort of the demise of the middle class jobs.
Right.
They're still out there.
Yeah,
We're just not preparing people for them.
Right.
Not every kid needs to go to college. Our society doesn't need every kid to go to college. Our society needs kids to do, lots of different things. Refrigeration, like whatever.
Or even just the life stuff, even if it's not your job, changing a tire.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I took in high school, we did 3: auto shop, wood shop, metal shop, and can't remember the third one, but like I still know how to do stuff
Right.
that, I wouldn't have known how to do. My dad was busy. He didn't teach me these things. I learned them at school. It's cool.
Right. I took auto shop at Lakewood High, but I feel like I would still be on the side of the road with my phone looking at a YouTube video, like how to change a car for dumb.
We reach a certain age.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, my God, if you look under the hood of a car today, it's a whole.
It's a little bit different.
It looks like a Mac.
Yeah, that's why I studied political science when and I think I only graduated because I think my dad said I remember he told me you're not college material type,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
he wasn't wrong.
Right.
But because he said
Right.
that, I was like, I'm going to get through it. I just had to take a lot of classes that turns out in political science, you just have to talk a lot and argue your point. And
You do.
so
It's part of it.
but so many jobs, you don't need to do all these things, but
Yep.
there's so many skills that we can be teaching and still, teach the foundational, math, science, and but using that as a through line to teach those things.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny. You talked about the fact that you studied poli-sci, and it's interesting because the reverse is true too. I always tell people, like, when I was in the legislature, we had a program. It was like a youth mentorship program, and other electeds call those programs like young assembly member program, young senator program.
Mhm.
I never wanted to call it that because for me, I'm not trying to create another generation of politicians.
Right.
That's democracy's about an auto mechanic who knows how politics impacts being a mechanic. It's a doctor knowing how public policy affects being a doctor, a realtor, knowing that everything you do in your, or a parent understanding that school board decisions impact their kid, right?
Right.
So for me, I think the reverse, is interesting too, right? I mean, I think we shouldn't be teaching people about government. People, I've had students say to me, tell me why I should run for office. I'm like, I don't know that you should. You should run for office if you want to.
Right.
But be a cop, be a firefighter, be whatever, but be a cop or a firefighter who knows about politics, right? Who knows about the system, because that's a vibrant democracy.
Right. It's all about being able to affect change, right?
Yep.
And I think knowing even the basics of the structures of government, it really help you target or direct your advocacy.
Yes.
So many times, we'll get something at the school board that is like, it's just not within our, it's about, the crossing guard,
Sure.
The traffic over here. It's just learning how those municipalities and jurisdictions work together really help you just be more effective in being heard.
Yep. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a big part of it. It's a big part about being a citizen, for sure.
Yeah. And then also I like to, you point them in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly.
And I say, hey, David, I got one for you.
Yeah, here you go. Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything about the speakership that you miss?
I'll
or just
I'll
being an elected.
yeah, I'll be honest with you, and this is not something my campaign team, would it turns you into an adrenaline junkie. Right?
What being an
Being
elected?
elected,
Yeah.
everything else seems
Yeah.
slow, right?
Yeah.
It's like I played sports when I was a kid. I remember when I met Ian Calderon, who turned out to be my majority leader. I remember I was watching him on the floor my freshman year, and I was like, "Hey, Ian, come here." He's like, "What?" I said, "You played sports, didn't you?" He said, "Yeah." He just, you can't sit down, and you turn it into like this sort of like, you know, um, sport. It becomes really physical, right?
Right.
Like really, like you can't, like you want to be moving all the time, particularly in the assembly, which is a huge, it's a huge building, a huge room, and you're chasing after votes. I miss that a lot. I
Yeah.
miss that that excitement a lot. I miss obviously, we had a tough budget year in Sacramento this year, and um, being in the room when decisions are being made or sorry, not being in the room when decisions are
Right.
made is hard. It's unfair, right? I watch a lot of sports, and you have all these ex jocks who serve as color commentators and announcers, and they're always being critical. And I think like, hey, I watched you play, dude. You weren't perfect all the time either,
Yeah.
right? And I'm probably do the same thing, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
they should be doing that right now, but I screwed up all the time too. So it's not fair, but you miss it. You miss
Right.
you miss being in the being in the fight.
I appreciate that's an honest answer.
It is an
'Cause-
honest answer.
Yeah.
It is.
Because
Yeah,
I could totally see that.
yeah, I do. Yeah, I just like
There's a lot of dopamine to be had,
yes,
and there's a lot of it's very engaged.
yes,
And there's also levels to it.
yes.
So I'm not going to pretend like I know the level
Well,
that you're, because
it's different.
so
yeah.
Assembly Member Salachi had like a bring your kid to work day, and I came. So I went up there and I was hanging out with them in Sacramento, and that was
It's a
it was
lot.
at that moment because I've always thought, hey, maybe assembly
Yeah.
or Senate, and I was like, no,
Yeah,
I'm good.
It's
I'm
honest.
gonna
That's honest,
I'm gonna
too.
stick around Lakewood and do this because it's the perfect balance for me
Yep.
of come home,
Yep.
puppy, kids,
Yep.
got that. But then there's the events, there's emails, and I put a lot into it, like a lot of my colleagues do, and I get that.
Yeah.
Like
And I think I hate to interrupt, but I think
No.
in some ways local government is harder sometimes too, because it's less abstract. There were so many times when I would be at an event in my district and a local council member would say to a constituent, a resident, like, oh, here's the speaker. And they were trying to like impress them. 9 times out of 10, a resident would push me out of the way. They'd be like, okay, great. Nice to meet you. And they'd
right.
tell the council member my sidewalk screwed up.
Mhm.
Somebody's parking on my street. They're playing music down the road. The assembly is abstract.
Yeah.
It's 400 miles away. We don't deal with streets or programs or schools. We deal with school districts,
Right.
right? We deal with broad programs. We say we're going to give X billions of dollars to this program, and then you guys have to figure it
Right.
out. And that's hard.
Right.
Because people know that, right? People recognize that. I remember ended up being a really good friend of mine my freshman year. One of the more senior legislators said, "You're gonna love. You go to the market, and everybody recognizes you, and they talk to you." I was in office 12 years. Nobody ever recognized me.
No.
Ever. And I told that guy recently. I was like, "Hey."
No, I recognize you. You were going to the Vaughn's right there on Woodruff,
Just-
and I
just because we're friends, right? But nobody's like, oh, you're the assembly member, the speaker. But I told that that assembly member, I was like, hey, people never recognize me. He's like, maybe it's because I was a council member, and it probably was, right? It's
maybe.
because they're on the street, they're at the local level, and that's the part that's really hard.
Yeah.
Sacramento's 400 miles away, and it's much more abstract.
Yeah.
You can't blame any one intersection on an assembly member.
Right.
You can blame traffic.
Right.
You can say you don't spend enough on roads versus highways versus transit, but you can't say you guys didn't fix that street corner. You
Yeah.
do that with council members, and that's hard because people notice
Yeah.
that.
And school
And
and
schools.
that's one thing I learned very, very quick. And I already knew, but I experienced when you're responsible for someone's kids,
Yep.
like you're gonna get a different level of, you
Yep.
know, attention.
For sure.
And on one hand, it could be really intense, especially when you want to help and
Yeah.
you want to do the right thing and you're trying, but there's, feelings one way. But on the other side, like there's a huge payoff when you are able to help
Oh,
that kid,
yeah.
and there's a huge appreciation.
Yeah.
So I get that part of it, but the level of just so much going on when I tagged along with
With
some member
Salache, yeah.
Salache. I was walking down the street with him, and he was just every conversation was required an entirely different context for each
Yeah.
one, and there's this bill and that bill, and it was just so much.
Yes.
I think I was starting to get a migraine. I was you know what,
Yeah.
that's
It's a lot.
that's a little.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot, man.
It's broad. It's to change gears from water to ag to here, we're so close to the port of Long Beach, the port of LA, to talk about goods movements, to talk about film tax credits, to talk about schools, to talk about air, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And there's also something to kind of going off the same like why you'd want to get back into it. I'm going to be running in 26 for my seat on the school board. And when I was thinking about it and talking to my wife, do I want to continue doing this? I mean, I already knew I did, but one of the things I said, why would I am a way better school board member 4 years after. I mean, I think of
Yeah.
all the investment of
Yep.
time. I go to all the conferences. I
Yeah.
just saw you in San Diego for the
Yeah.
Latino school board. Washington, Sacramento. I go to I don't even vacation.
Yeah.
My vacation is going to a conference. And you get all of this knowledge, and you learn how things work, and you can be more effective. And then to just stop
Yeah.
feels like a waste of
Yeah.
all of this investment.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, an incumbent or somebody who's had that experience, it's you have to value
Yeah.
that.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I remember one of the year I served as speaker I served with two governors, Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom. I remember early on, Jerry Brown, Jerry Brown studied philosophy. So I think a lot of the things it was just like rhetorical. He used to like to make arguments for the sake of making arguments or just to piss me off. Right. And I remember him saying like, you guys serve too long. You're here too long. Yeah. Yeah. I'd only do like 4 years and then leave. And
I used to say the same thing about it. Like, right?
I used to tell him, I was like, do you want a dentist like that? Do you want like a
Right.
mechanic like that? Like, oh,
Exactly.
I've only been doing this for 2 years. Oh, let's see
Right.
if this works out. I'm going to pull out your wisdom teeth now. Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's an expertise.
I think there's a sweet spot,
I
right?
do too.
Because 4 years
Yeah.
ago, somebody would talk about term limits. I'd be the first one
Yeah.
to say, yeah, term limits, you need new people,
Yep.
need, change all the time. And then now that I'm in there, there's a sweet spot
There is.
where you're not a lifelong, you've been there for,
Yeah.
40 years, and, you kind of
And
did
you see that.
everything. Yeah.
You see people who,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's, but that's, another thing, but like that sweet spot, I'd say between, I'd say 6 and 12 years,
Yeah.
like there's in a specific role, like you've already done the groundwork, you kind of identified issues, and you have, at least figured out a path to navigate how to
Yeah.
get things done.
Yeah, exactly. Earlier, we were talking about making corrections, mid-course corrections, right? I mean, one of the cool things about my service in the legislature was my class was the first term limit extension class. So we were there for 12 years. A guy like Jose Medina was he was higher education chair, I think, for 10 years. So year one, you try something, and then somebody tries to trot out a bill in year 5 and year 10. He can say like, no, we already did that. We tried that. It didn't work.
Right.
Or we tried that and this part worked, but this part didn't. Right. And it's like anything else in parenting, right? You're like,
Right.
Last time I said this and it didn't work. So, gonna try something else.
Right. I think that's one of the things that I think having the type of experience that you have going into that role, um, I get it. You know, other people that may be have been in the classroom more.
Yeah.
I get it, and that's valuable.
Yeah.
And like you said,
Good perspective. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
good candidates, but the time, especially in speakership, um, being able to navigate all of that, there's a huge value that I hope people see that as the value that it is when it comes to actually being able to get things done in that role that, others you're not going to just pick that up.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. And I think one of the big themes we've been talking about tonight is about you know, the diversity of like policy diversity, right? And diversity of geography. And I think part of the thing about being speaker is somebody comes in and says, we're doing housing policy and this is what I need for my district. I'm like, great. You're 179th, you're 180th of the state. That might work in San Francisco. That does not work in the suburban community. That does not work in Humboldt. That does not work for your colleague who sits across from you in Fresno. We have to come up with something that works for everybody. So yeah, I mean, I think being speaker, you have that unique perspective of having to look out for 80 different parts of the state, and that's it's a lot and it's challenging, but like you said, I think it's good insight.
Right. It's probably similar to even the superintendent role where you want to have the solution for everybody, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
With all so you really want to hold accountable, but the local control as much as possible.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the phrase I've probably used on this campaign more than any other is one size doesn't fit all, but one size doesn't fit all. And it's the case. You were talking about that conference we went to in San Diego. I mean, that's a good example of that. There's so many different perspectives throughout the state, and that's a good thing. But it's not a good thing if we're trying to make everybody conform, to our own reality. That's doesn't work. Doesn't work back home.
Right. Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
I know you're going to have a lot to do over the next year. When's the primary again?
Primary's in March, and then the general election's in November.
Okay. And one last question for you.
Sure.
One thing I always try to do with this podcast is I'm talking to more younger audience and our high school students and people that are just about to graduate. What's something that not just advice, but something that you've learned in your life that even if you were to tell 18-year-old Anthony, they wouldn't have done it, but you had to experience it to really grasp it. Something you had to experience to know that this is a truth. And I wish I would have been able to understand that at that age.
I think it probably has to do with mistakes. I mean, we've all had successes, and successes are easy enough to deal with. Real quick story. My daughter went snowboarding last year. First time. She was great. The last run down the mountain, she fell and blood and tears and all that. And that was supposed to be her last trip down the mountain. I said, hey, let's do this one more time, right? I didn't want her last time down to be that experience, right? And I think in life, you're going to succeed and you're going to fail. That's part of it. If you're doing anything that requires anything challenging at all, you're going to fail. But you got it. You have to not be so embarrassed or so sort of like traumatized by it that, I think what I would like to have known is like at the outset that like, hey, I'm going to fail a lot. And that doesn't mean that I'm a failure, right? It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with getting up and going down the mountain again.
It kind of goes to the saying, fail often, fail early.
Yes.
Or
yeah.
like that,
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
How did you experience that? Like pretty early?
I had a 0.83 grade point average in high school.
Right.
Yeah. No. Definitely. Yeah. I definitely learned early on that that you have to work hard. and that you have to stick to it, and that I think you said your dad said you weren't college material or
Oh, yeah.
something, right? You have to be aware that other people's perceptions of you are that's their perception of you.
Right.
That doesn't define you.
Yeah, I always thought you have to own it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if the shoe fits, that's,
Yeah.
take it and
Yeah.
consider it. But not everyone's. You don't have to own not everybody is
Yeah.
spot on.
Exactly.
And yeah, it kind of goes to the your failures don't define you.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
how you
Yeah.
bounce back.
How you get back up again. Yeah, exactly.
I have 6 brothers, so I had a lot of those
I
conversations.
bet you did.
Anthony, thank you
Sweet.
again, man.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching this episode of Brick by Brick. We'll catch you in the next one.
Sweet. How was my posture?
Dude, that's my first thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it all right?
Not for you, for me.
Yeah, was it? Sweet. Yeah, well, that's good.